Hey, welcome back to Poetry Lockdown. Been a busy week. Parent-teacher conference is coming up. Woot woot. But I still want to keep a lockdown in keep that practice going. So I'm really excited about today's. So I'm bringing another poem from Aracelis Girmay. I know I've referenced her a couple of times during these 300 plus days. But one of the things that I've been thinking about the last couple of times when I've been doing these videos is just the conversation between poets. So last time I read The Tradition, the title poem from Jericho Brown's wonderful collection, and then was just talking about his process of creating that poem, an interview with Michael Dumanis in Bennington Review. And so as I was thinking about Aracelis Girmay's work, I was just looking at different interviews, and I realized back in 2012, when she was just coming onto the scene, Kingdom on Amelia was coming out. She did this awesome interview, and her interviewer was a student intern at, I think, the Library of Congress, if I'm reading the interview right, and it was Elizabeth Acevedo. And if you don't know her work, I really recommend it, but really it's my students that have gotten me into Acevedo's work. She's done some novels in verse, some incredible spoken word poetry. And at this time, she's a really young poet. But she has some amazing questions, and there's just a really cool conversation between the two poets. So the reason I mention that too, as this long intro, is that she asked about a particular poem. And because of her question and the way that Girmay responded, it made me look at the poem and read it. And the poem's really been haunting me throughout the day. So I thought I'd share that one. So as an intro, let me read you Elizabeth Acevedo's question so you can kind of get a little context. So I really like this question. So Acevedo says to Girmay in this interview, in many of your poems, I'm thinking in particular of Three Girls, one of them a coward girl, and I want to read that in a moment. You delve into the vulnerabilities of your speakers, their cowardice, their failings. What does it mean to constantly revisit these moments of failure, to re-enter them through the poem? What an awesome question. And then this is from the poet, Girmay. Well, they're both poets. Girmay says, I didn't realize that maybe that's something I'm doing in more than a few poems. It's generous of you to say that is so. Generous because, quote, failure can be really hard for me. I am messing up all the time, but it can be hard to say it. Or if it's easy to say it, it's hard to move out of guilt into something active, useful. Wow, I love that and agree with that for myself too. The way to begin to move through this wall, I think, is to know that effort and work, the willingness to try, are critical and beautiful. My family helps me to remember the importance of effort, to keep that at the heart of things no matter what. And she goes on, and there's some wonderful things that she says, but then she also mentions the poem itself. So she says, in Three Girls, I'm interested in complicating the notion that there are the villains over here and the good guys over here. I'm hoping to think about the spectrum of human feeling and desire and curiosity that any one of us might feel or engage with at any moment. It's important to me that the poems move toward complication, forgiveness, kindness, and do not depend on binary positions or relationships. And I think that's a great way to introduce this poem because it has a haunting ambiguity. So with that in mind, let me read the poem. This is from her, I think it's her first collection, Kingdom and Amelia, Aracelis Girmay. So her poem is called Three Girls, one of them a coward girl. The great and eerie lake of this memory seeps through the trees, in the pail, through the house, away from us. They dashed and turned. We have never been cats before, but pretend we are their mothers. That afternoon, we fill the garbage pail with water from the garden hose. As the neighbor girl skates the blank face of her sad and clean yard where nothing grows. We are busy drowning cats. Though we say We are saving them and making them clean. So drop the small mouths into water and scream. The way they thrash before we reach, I do not, back into the pail to save them, away from the clear gray eye of the human mother who would stop our game forever if she saw. We were hunters. To see them scatter, frantic, made our teeth grow long. 300 years after the fact, I could write 6 sentences about cruelty and what it means to build a trap, but I am most afraid of how quickly we said yes and yes again to the bright confusion of their bodies in water, how frightened the hand from reaching into that mess of fangs and leaping eyes, how frightened of saving them. I wish I were a hero. That type who despite the bite, knew what to do and did it. Or the neighbor girl, far away from the rest of us in this memory now, on her roller skates back and forth, as if silently countering the death we conjured by filling her sad yard with the shadow and skin of her moving, living body over the lot. Her body killing nothing with its hands. Wow, right? 3 girls, one of them a coward girl by Aracelis Girmay. What a poem. I like to say a little something about the poem. I know I had a really long intro, so I won't say too much, but why do I admire or love this poem? I think of 2 reasons. One, the first is I like how it doesn't look away. I think a great poem doesn't blink. It's kind of unwavering in its attentiveness. And this is scary as hell, right? You've got these children that are like dumping cats, and I'm not sure, some of them I think are, well, it says we are busy drowning cats, so I don't think all of them get saved. But the poet, the speaker, really just observes this and observes the internal and the external and just doesn't blink, pays attention to it. And then I think it also just the poet really lets you stay there. It doesn't really offer an easy resolution. I mean, part of what I loved about what Girmay said to Acevedo in that interview is that, you know, I think she doesn't want the easy binary, right? You know, there's a child and a group of children. I read them as children. I think I'm reading that right. That are doing something at the same time. It's really terrible. And then it's also like they have this sort of vision of themselves as saving to kind of clean up in their own minds what they're doing. And it feels real. It feels authentic, and it haunts the hell out of me. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's my reading right now. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this poem. I think sometimes I just like to be jolted by poetry, and this did that. It just, it totally woke me up at like 6 in the morning when I was reading it. So whenever you hear this video, I'd love to know what this poem did for you. But Girmay's work is incredible, and Acevedo's is as well. So I really recommend that interview in its entirety, and hope you have a good rest of your week. Peace.